I'm Samantha, 32, and my sister Amber just announced she's pregnant with her fifth child. My heart sank when I heard the news. For years, I've been the one raising her 4 children while she bounces between relationships. Every time, she promises things will be different, but they never are. This time, as everyone looked at me with expectation in their eyes, I realized I couldn't do this anymore. Before I tell you what happened next, where are you watching from? Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to make a difficult choice with family. Let's dive into why this fifth pregnancy was my final breaking point. To understand why my sister's fifth pregnancy announcement hit me so hard, you need to know our history. I've always been the responsible one in our family. Since childhood, our roles were clearly defined. I was the organized, reliable daughter who made our parents proud, while Amber was the free-spirited one who needed constant guidance. I built my career in marketing with determination and focus, working my way up to an executive position at a respected firm in Boston. I love my job, it challenges me intellectually and allows me creative freedom. Or at least it did, before I became the default caregiver for my sister's children. Our family dynamic was established early. Our parents, though loving, created an environment where Amber's irresponsibility was constantly excused. "That's just how Amber is," they'd say after she missed curfew or failed a class she hadn't studied for. Meanwhile, I was expected to maintain perfect grades, help around the house, and eventually, pick up the pieces of Amber's chaotic life. When Amber got pregnant at 21 with Lily, it was unexpected but not exactly shocking. She'd been dating Troy, a bartender at the club where she worked, for only 3 months. By the time Lily was born, Troy had already moved to California, claiming he wasn't ready for fatherhood. He hasn't contacted Amber since. I remember the day Amber brought newborn Lily to my apartment, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know how to do this, Sam," she sobbed. "Can I stay with you just for a few days until I figure things out?" Those few days turned into weeks, then months. I converted my home office into a nursery, buying a crib and changing table with money I'd been saving for a vacation to Europe. Our parents tried to help initially, but Dad's heart condition and Mom's arthritis limited their physical ability to care for an infant. They contributed financially when they could, but they're retired and living on a fixed income. The responsibility of childcare fell squarely on my shoulders. I rearranged my work schedule, taking advantage of my company's flexible hours policy to accommodate daycare pickups and doctor appointments. My boss was understanding at first, but I could tell my career advancement was slowing. Projects that would have normally been assigned to me went to colleagues who could work late or travel without complications. Meanwhile, Amber would occasionally land a job, usually in retail or food service, but never kept one for more than a few months. She'd either quit because the manager was a jerk or get fired for tardiness or absenteeism. Her contribution to Lily's expenses was minimal and inconsistent. As Lily grew from infant to toddler, I fell in love with my niece. She was a bright, curious child with Amber's infectious laugh but a steadiness that reminded me of myself. I took pride in teaching her to read early, in soothing her fears, in being her constant. But beneath that love was a growing resentment toward my sister. My personal life suffered immensely during those years. I'd started dating Mark, a software engineer who seemed perfect for me. We shared interests in hiking and photography, and he had the same dry sense of humor as me. But after canceling 4 dates in a row because Lily was sick or Amber had a crisis, Mark gently ended things. "You don't have room in your life for a relationship right now," he said. The worst part was, I knew he was right. Friends gradually stopped inviting me to social events. I missed birthday celebrations, weekend trips, and happy hours. My friend Rachel finally admitted, "We stopped asking because you always say no." The isolation was crushing, but I felt trapped by obligation and guilt. When Amber announced she was pregnant with her second child, I was in the middle of being considered for a promotion. Jake was born right as I was supposed to lead a major campaign presentation. I sent my work from the hospital waiting room and listened to the conference call while holding a newborn Jake. I didn't get the promotion. Jake's father, Derek, stuck around longer than Troy had, nearly 6 months after Jake's birth. He even lived with Amber briefly in a studio apartment she could barely afford. But when he lost his job at the warehouse, he disappeared overnight, taking Amber's laptop and the small amount of savings she had managed to accumulate. Once again, Amber and her children moved into my apartment. I pushed my queen-sized bed against the wall to make room for a toddler bed for Lily, while Jake's crib went at the foot of my bed. My living room became a playroom, toys scattered across the floor that I would trip over when coming home exhausted from work. The financial strain was enormous. Daycare for 2 children cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Formula, diapers, clothes, doctor visits, the expenses were endless. I depleted my savings and started putting charges on my credit card, watching my debt grow month by month. Through it all, Amber would make promises. "I'm going to get it together this time, Sam. I'm applying for a receptionist job tomorrow." Or "I'll start paying you back next month, I promise." The jobs rarely materialized, and the repayments never came. I love my niece and nephew deeply, but as I watched my own dreams slipping away, resentment grew like a shadow in my heart. I'd lie awake at night, listening to the children's breathing, wondering how my life had become so completely derailed from the path I had planned. By the time Jake was 2, a clear pattern had established itself in our lives. My mornings began at 5:30 a.m., preparing bottles and breakfast, packing lunches and daycare bags, all before showering and dressing for my corporate job. I'd wake Lily for school, coax her into her clothes while she was still half asleep, and then gently rouse Jake for daycare. Amber would usually still be sleeping when we left. On the rare occasions she was awake, she'd be scrolling through social media on her phone, promising to look for jobs today or clean up while you're gone. The apartment would look the same when I returned, except for new dishes in the sink and different clothes on the floor. The daycare was a 20-minute drive in the opposite direction from my office, adding nearly an hour to my commute. I'd rush through traffic, constantly checking the time, anxiety building as I calculated whether I'd make it to my 9 a.m. meeting. I kept a professional outfit in my car for the days when Jake would spit up on my blouse or Lily would spill juice on my skirt just as we were walking out the door. My colleagues stopped asking about my weekend plans. My standard answer had become, "I'll be taking the kids to the park," or "Lily has a birthday party to attend." My identity had been subsumed by my caregiving role. When Amber announced her 3rd pregnancy, twins this time, I sat on the bathroom floor of my office and cried silently during my lunch break. The father was Ryan, a charming but unreliable musician she'd been dating for about 5 months. Unlike the previous fathers, Ryan actually seemed excited about the pregnancy. He attended the first ultrasound appointment and even started looking for a more stable job to support his new family. For a brief, shining moment, I allowed myself to hope that things would be different this time. Maybe Ryan would be the one to break the cycle. Maybe Amber would finally grow into the responsibility of motherhood with a supportive partner by her side. Ryan lasted longer than the others. He was present for the birth of Emma and Ethan and stayed involved for nearly a year. He moved Amber and the children into a small apartment, and for the first time in years, I had my space back to myself. I repainted the walls, bought new furniture that wasn't stain-resistant or child-proof, and tentatively began dating again. I met Michael through a work colleague. He was thoughtful and understanding about my family situation, even encouraging me to maintain my close relationship with my nieces and nephew. For 6 months, I experienced what felt like a normal life: dinner dates, weekend getaways, conversations that didn't revolve around childcare or my sister's latest crisis. Then Ryan and Amber's relationship imploded spectacularly. I never got the full story, something about Ryan's ex-girlfriend and betrayal, but the result was Ryan moving out and stopping his financial support almost immediately. The apartment they'd been renting was now unaffordable for Amber alone, especially with 4 children to support. I'll never forget the phone call. It was a Tuesday evening, and Michael and I were cooking dinner together in my kitchen, jazz playing softly in the background, wine glasses on the counter. When I saw Amber's name on my phone, the momentary happiness I'd been feeling evaporated instantly. "The landlord's giving us until the end of the month," Amber sobbed into the phone. "I don't know where we're going to go, Sam. The twins are still so little." Michael watched my face as I spoke with my sister, and I could see the realization dawning in his eyes. Our budding relationship wouldn't survive another round of my sister's chaos. 2 weeks later, he ended things gently but firmly. "You're amazing, Samantha," he said, holding my hands across the restaurant table. "But I can see that your family needs you right now, and I don't think there's room for me in that equation." I couldn't even argue with him. He was right. Within a month, my apartment was once again transformed into a chaotic family home. Lily, now 5, shared my office-turned-bedroom with 3-year-old Jake, while the twins' cribs took up most of my bedroom. I slept on a pull-out couch in the living room, surrounded by toys and baby gear. My morning routine became even more complex, now involving 4 children of different ages with different needs and schedules. I hired a teenager from the neighborhood to help with afternoon pickups, stretching my budget even thinner to afford the extra help. My work performance suffered noticeably. I missed deadlines, forgot details in presentations, and struggled to focus during meetings after nights interrupted by crying babies. My boss, Patricia, called me into her office for a formal warning. "Samantha, you've been a valuable member of our team for years," she said, her tone sympathetic but firm. "But these performance issues can't continue. We need to know if you can still handle the responsibilities of your position." I promised to do better, fighting back tears of exhaustion and frustration. That night, I came home to find Amber had gone out with friends, leaving Lily in charge of her younger siblings. Lily, at only 5 years old, was attempting to heat up canned soup for Jake while the twins cried in their playpen. The sight of my kindergarten-aged niece standing on a stool at the hot stove, while Amber was out socializing, broke something inside me. After feeding the children, bathing them, and putting them to bed, I confronted my sister when she returned home shortly before midnight. "This can't continue, Amber," I said, my voice shaking with anger and exhaustion. Lily could have burned herself or started a fire. The twins were crying and needed changing. "You can't just leave them like this." Amber's eyes filled with tears. "I just needed a break, Sam. Just a couple of hours to feel like a normal person again. You don't know how hard it is being a single mom." The irony of her statement, that I didn't understand the challenges of raising her children, was so overwhelming that I couldn't even form a response. I simply walked away, locked myself in the bathroom, and let silent tears fall as I sat on the edge of the bathtub. Friends stopped checking in. Family gatherings became opportunities for relatives to praise Amber's strength as a single mother while taking for granted my role in keeping her children fed, clothed, and educated. My parents, though they recognized my sacrifice to some degree, continued to enable Amber's behavior with comments like, "Family helps family. That's just what sisters do." But was this really what sisters did? Was it normal to put your entire life on hold to raise someone else's children? As I watched Amber cycle through jobs, relationships, and bursts of motivation that quickly fizzled, I began to wonder if my help was actually enabling her irresponsibility rather than supporting her through difficult times. The twins' 3rd birthday party was the perfect illustration of our dysfunctional dynamic. I spent weeks planning it, ordering a custom cake, decorating my apartment, and purchasing gifts that I wrapped and labeled as being from both Amber and me. On the day of the party, Amber showed up an hour late, having overslept, and spent most of the celebration taking selfies with the children for social media, captioned with #supermom and #doingitall. As I cleaned frosting off the furniture after the guests had left, Amber sat scrolling through her phone, editing her photos. "These turned out so cute," she said, showing me a picture of herself with all 4 children. "Everyone's saying what an amazing mom I am to handle everything on my own." I bit my tongue until it nearly bled. It was a Sunday evening in April when everything changed. Our parents had invited us for a family dinner at their house, a monthly tradition that usually involved Dad grilling steaks while Mom prepared her famous potato salad. I'd spent the morning helping Lily with her science project, then bathed the twins and dressed all 4 children in clean outfits before driving them to my parents' suburban home. Amber had texted that she would meet us there, as she often did, avoiding the chaotic process of getting the children ready. When we arrived, she was already sitting on the patio with our parents, sipping iced tea and laughing about something on her phone. Dinner began normally enough. Dad carved the steaks while Mom fussed over the twins' bibs and sippy cups. Lily chatted excitedly about her upcoming school field trip, while Jake concentrated intensely on building a mountain of mashed potatoes on his plate. Then, as Mom was serving dessert, her homemade apple pie, Amber cleared her throat and smiled brightly. "I have some news," she announced, her hand moving to rest on her stomach in a gesture I'd seen too many times before. "I'm pregnant again." The room went silent. Dad's fork paused midway to his mouth. Mom's smile froze in place. Lily looked up from her pie with wide, confused eyes. "Another baby?" she asked. "Where will it sleep?" It was an innocent question from an 8-year-old, but it cut straight to the heart of the matter. Where indeed would another child sleep in my already overcrowded apartment? "Don't worry about that, sweetie," Amber said, reaching over to pat Lily's hand. "We'll figure it all out." "We always do, right, Sam?" All eyes turned to me. I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me, the room spinning slightly as the implications of this news sank in. Another baby. Another round of midnight feedings. Another car seat to squeeze into my vehicle. Another set of daycare fees that would push my credit card even closer to its limit. "Who's the father?" I finally managed to ask, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Amber's smile dimmed slightly. "His name is Jason. He's great, he manages a cell phone store." Her tone turned defensive. "It's still early in our relationship, but he's really excited about the baby." I'd heard variations of this exact statement with each of her previous pregnancies. The faces and names changed, but the outcome never did. "Excuse me," I murmured, pushing back from the table. "I need some air." I made it to the bathroom just as the room began to spin in earnest. Leaning against the cool tile wall, I slid down until I was sitting on the floor, my head between my knees as I focused on taking deep breaths. 2 weeks earlier, I'd visited my doctor about the persistent headaches and insomnia that had become my constant companions. After running several tests and asking pointed questions about my lifestyle, Dr. Bennett had looked at me with concern. "Samantha, you're experiencing classic symptoms of burnout and anxiety," she'd said. "Your blood pressure is elevated, and your cortisol levels are through the roof. If you don't make significant changes to reduce your stress, I'm concerned about the long-term impact on your health." She'd written me a prescription for anxiety medication and strongly recommended therapy. "This isn't sustainable," were her exact words. "Something has to give." Now, sitting on my parents' bathroom floor, those words echoed in my mind. This wasn't sustainable. I couldn't keep sacrificing my health, my career, my relationships, my entire life on the altar of my sister's irresponsibility. As I sat there, I heard footsteps in the hallway, then Amber's voice and my mother's, stopping just outside the bathroom door. "Don't worry about Sam," Amber was saying. "She's probably just surprised. You know she'll help out like she always does. She loves the kids." "I don't know, Amber," my mother replied, her voice uncharacteristically stern. "Sam's been carrying a heavy load for a long time. Maybe you should consider." "Consider what, Mom?" Amber interrupted, her tone suddenly sharp. "I'm keeping this baby. And Sam will be fine with it once she gets used to the idea. She always is." Their footsteps moved away down the hall, but their words remained, burning in my mind. Sam will help out like she always does. Not a question. Not a request. A presumption. An entitlement to my time, my space, my money, my life. I pulled myself up and splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me had dark circles under her eyes and a perpetual worry line between her brows that hadn't been there 3 years ago. I barely recognized myself. The drive home was silent. Lily sensed something was wrong and quietly read a book to Jake in the back seat, while the twins mercifully fell asleep in their car seats. Amber had decided to stay at our parents' house for the night, a convenient escape from the tension. After putting the children to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and my laptop. For hours, I researched topics I'd never allowed myself to fully explore before: codependency, enabling behaviors, healthy boundaries, family systems. The more I read, the more clearly I saw the dysfunctional patterns that had trapped both Amber and me, her in a cycle of dependence and irresponsibility, me in a cycle of resentment and martyrdom. I pulled out a journal I'd neglected for months and began to write, listing everything I'd sacrificed: my savings, my career advancement, my relationship with Michael, my friendships, my health, my dreams of travel, my hobbies, my space, my peace of mind. The list filled page after page. Then I wrote down what Amber had sacrificed: nothing. She still went out with friends, dated, pursued her interests, made impulsive decisions without considering consequences, and expected others to manage those consequences for her. As the night deepened, a clarity I hadn't felt in years washed over me. I couldn't continue this way. I wouldn't continue this way. For my own survival, and paradoxically, for Amber's growth, something had to change. By the time the sun rose, casting golden light across my cluttered living room, I had made my decision. 3 days later, I texted Amber asking her to meet me for coffee at a small cafe halfway between our parents' house and my apartment. I chose a public location deliberately, neutral territory where neither of us would feel too comfortable or too vulnerable. The cafe was quiet on a Tuesday afternoon, with just a few tables occupied by people working on laptops or reading books. I arrived early and selected a corner table, ordering a black coffee to steady my nerves. I'd rehearsed what I wanted to say dozens of times, but my heart still raced as I waited. Amber arrived 15 minutes late, looking radiant despite the circumstances. Pregnancy always suited her physically, giving her skin a glow and her hair extra shine. She ordered a decaf latte and a chocolate muffin before joining me at the table. "So," she said, breaking off a piece of muffin, "I guess we should talk about the new baby situation. I was thinking we could convert that storage closet in your hallway into a little nursery space. It's small, but newborns don't need much room, right?" She continued chatting about her plans, seemingly oblivious to the fact that I hadn't responded or even smiled since she sat down. Finally, when she paused to take a sip of her latte, I seized the moment. "Amber, I need to tell you something important," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I can't take in another child. In fact, I think it's time for you and the kids to find your own place." Amber's mug froze halfway to her lips. "What are you talking about? Is this about the closet? We could figure out another arrangement." "This isn't about the closet," I interrupted. "This is about the fact that I've been raising your children for you for the past 8 years, and I can't do it anymore. My health is suffering. My career is suffering. I've lost relationships and friendships. I'm in debt. And I'm exhausted, Amber. Completely exhausted." Amber set down her mug, her expression transitioning from confusion to defensive anger. "So what are you saying? You're just going to abandon your nieces and nephews? Throw us out on the street? Because things are a little inconvenient for you?" "This isn't about inconvenience," I said, fighting to keep my voice level. "This is about boundaries. I love Lily, Jake, Emma, and Ethan. I'll always be their aunt. But I can't be their primary caregiver anymore. You're their mother, Amber. Not me." "I can't believe how selfish you're being right now," Amber hissed, tears forming in her eyes. "You know I can't afford my own place with 4, soon to be 5, kids. What am I supposed to do?" "There are resources available," I said, pulling out a folder I'd prepared. "Housing assistance programs, childcare subsidies, job training programs. I've researched all of them for you. I'm willing to help you apply and get established. But I can't continue enabling this pattern we've created." Amber pushed the folder away without looking at it. "Enabling? Is that what you think you've been doing? You've been helping your sister who's struggling as a single mother. That's what family does, Sam. They help each other." "Yes, family helps each other," I agreed. But there's a difference between helping and taking over completely. I've been raising your children while you continue making the same choices that created this situation in the first place. That's not helping you, it's enabling you to avoid the consequences of your decisions. Amber's face flushed with anger. So that's what you think of me? That I'm just some irresponsible party girl pawning my kids off on you? Do you have any idea how hard it is to be a single mother? To have everyone judging you all the time? You're not a single mother, Amber, I said quietly. I'm raising your children. You're a mother who has free childcare, housing, and financial support anytime you need it. You've never had to experience the full reality of your choices because I've always been there to cushion the blow. Amber's tears were flowing freely now, mascara tracing black lines down her cheeks. I can't believe you don't love the kids enough to. Don't, I cut her off, my voice sharp. Don't you dare suggest I don't love those children. I love them enough to have sacrificed everything for them for years. This isn't about not loving them. This is about the fact that they deserve a mother who takes responsibility for them, and I deserve to have my own life back. Amber stood up abruptly, grabbing her purse. You're just jealous, she spat. You've always been jealous that I can have children and you're still single with no prospects. Well, congratulations, Sam. You finally found a way to punish me for having a life you couldn't have. The accusation stung, but I recognized it for what it was, a desperate attempt to deflect from the real issues by hurting me enough to make me back down. I remained seated, looking up at my sister's angry, tearful face. I'm giving you 2 months to find alternative arrangements, I said calmly. I'll help you look for apartments and apply for assistance programs. I'll continue watching the kids while you work or go to interviews. But after 2 months, you and the children need to have your own place. You'll regret this, Amber said, her voice trembling. When you're old and alone with no one who cares about you, you'll regret pushing away the only family you have. With that parting shot, she stormed out of the cafe, leaving her half-eaten muffin and cooling latte on the table. I sat there for a long time afterward, hands wrapped around my coffee mug, which had long since gone cold. The next few days were a barrage of text messages, not just from Amber but from my parents and even a few extended family members who'd heard Amber's version of events, that I was heartlessly evicting her and her children out of jealousy and selfishness. My mother called, her voice strained with disappointment. Samantha, I know you're frustrated, but family has to stick together. Amber and those children need you. I know they do, Mom, I replied. But I need me too. And I can't keep sacrificing my entire life for Amber's choices. My father was more understanding, surprisingly. During a private phone call, he admitted, your mother and I may have contributed to this situation by always expecting you to be the responsible one. That wasn't fair to you, Sam. A few relatives took Amber's side completely, sending me judgmental messages about the importance of family and the special bond between sisters. Only my Aunt Carol reached out with a different perspective. I've watched you sacrifice for years, Samantha, she wrote in a thoughtful email. There's a difference between supporting someone and carrying them. You've been carrying Amber for too long. It's time she learned to walk on her own. Those words were a lifeline during the difficult days that followed, as Amber alternated between angry accusations, tearful pleas, and cold silence. The children, sensing the tension, became more difficult to manage. Lily asked pointed questions about why I didn't want them anymore, questions undoubtedly planted by Amber. I love you all very much, I told her as I tucked her into bed one night. But sometimes adults need to make hard choices so that everyone can be healthier and happier in the long run. Her small face was serious in the glow of her night light. Is it because of the new baby? Because I could help more with the baby if that's what you're worried about. My heart broke at her words, this 8-year-old child offering to take on even more responsibility to fix adult problems. It only reinforced my conviction that the current situation was unhealthy for everyone, including the children. A week after our cafe confrontation, my parents called a family meeting at their house. When I arrived, I found not just my parents and Amber, but also my Aunt Carol and Uncle Dave, my cousin Rebecca, and my mother's sister Linda with her husband Tom. Amber sat on the couch, eyes red from crying, one hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. "We've asked everyone here to help figure out this situation," my mother explained, her tone making it clear that figuring out this situation meant convincing me to change my mind. For the next hour, I listened as various family members expressed their opinions on what I should do. Most of them, with limited understanding of the full situation, leaned toward supporting Amber. They pointed out her vulnerability as a single mother, the needs of the innocent children, and the importance of family solidarity during difficult times. When it was finally my turn to speak, I took a deep breath and looked around the room at the faces of my family, people who had known me my entire life but who had never truly seen the weight I'd been carrying. "I love my sister," I began. "And I love my nieces and nephews more than I can express. But what's happening isn't healthy for any of us. Not for me, not for Amber, and not for the children." I explained the toll the past 8 years had taken on my physical and mental health. I told them about my doctor's warning, about the anxiety medication I was now taking just to get through each day. I described the financial strain that had left me with depleted savings and mounting credit card debt. I shared how my career had stagnated while colleagues with less experience but more availability had been promoted past me. "I've been enabling Amber to avoid the natural consequences of her choices," I continued. "And in doing so, I prevented her from developing the skills and resilience she needs to be the mother her children deserve. I'm not abandoning my family. I'm trying to help all of us find a healthier way forward." The room was silent when I finished speaking. Then Aunt Carol stood up and moved to sit beside me, taking my hand in hers. "I think Samantha is right," she said firmly. "We've all been complicit in creating this situation by expecting Sam to be the solution to Amber's problems. That needs to change." Amber jumped to her feet. "Of course you'd take her side. Everyone always thinks Sam is so perfect and I'm just the screw-up." "Well, fine. If no one in this family is willing to help a single mother in need, I'll figure it out myself. But don't expect to be part of my children's lives if you turn your backs on us now." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. My mother started to rise, but my father gently pulled her back down beside him. "Let her go, Helen," he said softly. "She needs some time to process." The family meeting dissolved after that, with some relatives leaving awkwardly and others staying to talk in small groups. My parents looked exhausted and conflicted. I left feeling emotionally drained but also strangely lightened, as if speaking my truth aloud had lifted some of the invisible burden I'd been carrying. As I drove home, my car made a strange knocking sound and then died completely, forcing me to coast to the shoulder of the road. I sat there in the gathering darkness, rain beginning to patter against the windshield, and finally allowed myself to cry, deep, wrenching sobs that shook my entire body. In that moment, I questioned everything. Was I making a terrible mistake? Was I being selfish? Would this decision irreparably damage my relationship with my sister and the children I loved? Would my family ever forgive me? As I waited for the tow truck, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered anyway, wiping tears from my face. "Is this Samantha?" a man's voice asked. "Yes," I replied, my voice still thick with tears. "This is Derek, Jake's dad. Your sister gave me your number a long time ago as an emergency contact, and I've been wanting to reach out. I heard about what's going on, and I think maybe we should talk." The meeting with Derek, Jake's father, was unexpected in every way. We met at a diner the following evening, and I barely recognized the man who slid into the booth across from me. The Derek I remembered had been a lanky warehouse worker with an overgrown beard and perpetually wrinkled clothes. The man before me now was clean-cut, wearing a button-down shirt and khakis, his face more mature but also more settled. "I've been sober for 3 years," he explained, after ordering coffee for both of us. "Working a steady job as a construction foreman, same company the whole time." He pulled out his phone and showed me pictures of a modest but neat apartment, then a photo of himself with a young boy who wasn't Jake. "That's my stepson, Tyler. His mom, Renee, and I have been married for almost 2 years now. She's helped me stay on track, get my life together. I listened as Derek explained how he'd hit rock bottom after leaving Amber, ending up homeless for a period before finding a rehabilitation program that helped him get sober and rebuild his life. "I've wanted to reach out about Jake for a long time," he admitted. "But I was afraid Amber wouldn't let me see him, or that it would just cause more drama. When I heard through a mutual friend that you were finally setting boundaries, I thought maybe the time was right." Derek wanted to establish a relationship with his son and was even willing to provide financial support and regular visitation. He'd consulted a family law attorney about his rights and responsibilities and seemed genuinely committed to being part of Jake's life. "I can't change the past or the fact that I wasn't there for him from the beginning," Derek said, his eyes showing genuine regret. "But I want to be there for him now and going forward." As I drove home from the diner, I felt a complex mix of emotions: hope that Jake might have his father in his life after all, anger at the years Derek had been absent, and a growing recognition that people could change if given the right motivation and support. The next morning, I called a therapist whose name I'd had in my contacts for months but had never found the time to see. Dr. Mitchell had an opening the following week, and I scheduled an appointment, determined to get professional help navigating this difficult transition. Before I could tell Amber about Derek's reappearance, another crisis erupted. I received a call from Lily's school principal informing me that my niece had been caught stealing food from the cafeteria and hiding it in her backpack. When I picked her up from school, Lily burst into tears as soon as she saw me. "I was just trying to help," she sobbed. "Mommy said we might not have enough food soon because you don't love us anymore." I pulled over a block from the school and turned to face my niece, my heart breaking at the fear and confusion in her young eyes. "Lily, listen to me," I said firmly. "You will always have enough food. Always. I promise you that. And I love you, Jake, Emma, and Ethan very, very much. That has not changed and will never change." I drove her back to my apartment and called Amber immediately, my hands shaking with a mixture of anger and concern. "How could you tell an 8-year-old child that she might not have enough food?" I demanded when Amber answered. "I didn't say that exactly," Amber replied defensively. "I just said things were going to be harder for us because you were making us leave." She must have misunderstood. "She's stealing food, Amber. She's terrified. These are your children, and they're being traumatized by the way you're handling this situation." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Amber spoke again, her voice was smaller, less certain. "I don't know what to do, Sam. I'm scared too." It was the first genuine admission of vulnerability I'd heard from my sister in years. In that moment, some of my anger dissipated, replaced by a complicated compassion. Amber wasn't a villain, she was a young woman who had never developed the tools to handle adult responsibilities because she'd never had to. "We need to talk to the kids together," I said. "They need to hear from both of us that they're going to be okay, that we both love them, and that these changes don't mean they're being abandoned." Amber agreed, and that evening we sat down with all 4 children. Amber, to her credit, reassured them that they would always have enough food and a safe place to live. I promised that I would always be their aunt who loved them, even if we didn't all live in the same apartment anymore. "Like when Ryan and I broke up," Amber explained to the confused children. "He still loves you and sees you sometimes, but he doesn't live with us. Aunt Sam will still see you and love you, but we'll have our own place." It wasn't a perfect conversation, but it was a start, the first time Amber and I had presented a united front to the children in years. The following week, I met with Dr. Mitchell, a compassionate woman in her 50s with a direct manner that I appreciated. Over the course of our first few sessions, she helped me recognize the codependent patterns that had defined my relationship with Amber. "You've been the rescuer for so long that it's become your identity," she observed. "But rescuing someone from the natural consequences of their actions isn't actually helping them grow. It's keeping them stuck." Dr. Mitchell suggested concrete steps for establishing healthier boundaries, including creating a written list of what I was willing and unwilling to do during this transition period and beyond. I was willing to help Amber apply for housing assistance and other support programs. Assist with childcare during specific, agreed-upon hours while Amber worked or attended job interviews. Spend quality time with my nieces and nephews on a regular schedule. Provide emotional support and guidance to Amber as she developed independence. I was unwilling to continue housing Amber and her children indefinitely. Take primary responsibility for the children's daily care. Sacrifice my financial stability or physical health. Be the default solution to every crisis. With Dr. Mitchell's encouragement, I scheduled a meeting with just my parents, away from the emotionally charged atmosphere of the larger family gathering. We met at a quiet restaurant near their home, and I presented my boundaries clearly and calmly. I love Amber, and I love her children, I told them. But I can't continue sacrificing my entire life to compensate for her choices. It's not healthy for any of us, including the kids. My father, always the more practical of my parents, nodded thoughtfully. I understand what you're saying, Sam. And if I'm being honest, your mother and I have enabled this situation too. We've expected you to be the solution because it was easier than pushing Amber to grow up. My mother looked pained but didn't disagree. I just worry about the children, she said softly. They've already had so much instability in their young lives. Which is exactly why this cycle needs to break, I replied. They need their mother to step up and be the parent they deserve. And they need me to be a healthy, present aunt rather than an exhausted, resentful substitute parent. Slowly, my parents began to see the wisdom in what I was proposing. My father even admitted that he and my mother had been discussing downsizing from their 4-bedroom house now that they were older, but had hesitated partly because they knew they might need the space for Amber and the children at some point. Maybe we've all been planning our lives around Amber's crises for too long, he said. Just as it seemed we were making progress toward a healthier family dynamic, another crisis erupted. My mother called early one morning, her voice tight with worry. Your sister's in the hospital, she said. Her blood pressure spiked dangerously high. The doctor says it's preeclampsia. They're monitoring her and the baby closely. I rushed to the hospital, finding my mother sitting beside Amber's bed while a nurse checked the monitors. Amber looked small and vulnerable in the hospital gown, and in her arm and fear in her eyes. The doctor says I need to reduce my stress level, she said when we were alone, her voice barely above a whisper. He says the baby could be in danger if my blood pressure doesn't stabilize. We both knew what she was implying, that the stress of our conflict and my boundary setting had caused this medical emergency. Part of me wanted to back down immediately, to promise her that nothing would change, that I would continue supporting her as I always had. But Dr. Mitchell's words echoed in my mind, boundaries aren't punishment. They're the foundation of healthy relationships. I'm so sorry you're going through this, I said, taking Amber's hand. And I want to help you reduce your stress. But that doesn't mean returning to our old patterns. It means finding sustainable solutions that work for everyone. Amber started to argue, but the doctor arrived for his rounds. After examining Amber and reviewing her charts, he explained that while stress could exacerbate preeclampsia, it wasn't the sole cause. He prescribed bed rest, medication, and regular monitoring for the remainder of her pregnancy. As we left the hospital that evening, my mother pulled me aside in the parking lot. I know you're trying to do the right thing, Sam. But maybe this isn't the time to push for such big changes. Amber needs stability right now. Mom, I said gently, Amber has needed stability her entire adult life. There will never be a perfect time for her to learn independence. But right now, with her blood pressure issues, is exactly when she needs more support from all of us, not just me. For the first time, my mother seemed to truly hear me. She nodded slowly. You're right. Your father and I have been discussing it, and we think Amber and the children should move in with us, at least until after the baby is born. We have the space, and between the two of us, we can help with the kids while she's on bed rest. It was a solution I hadn't expected but one that made perfect sense. My parents' house had plenty of room, they were retired with time to help, and it would allow Amber to have support without placing the entire burden on me. When we presented the idea to Amber the next day, her reaction surprised me. Instead of gratitude, she seemed almost disappointed. But what about all my stuff at Sam's apartment, she asked. And the kids are settled in their schools near her place. The school year ends in 6 weeks, I pointed out. They can finish out the year, and then in the fall, they can start at the school near mom and dad's house. As for your things, we can move them gradually. There's no rush. Reluctantly, Amber agreed to the plan. As we left her hospital room, she called me back. Sam? Thank you for coming today. And for not just giving in when I tried to use this to make you feel guilty. It was a small moment of self-awareness from my sister, but it felt significant. The next few weeks were busy as we prepared for Amber's discharge from the hospital and her move to our parents' house. I helped clear out their spare bedrooms and set up spaces for the children. My father, a retired carpenter, even built bunk beds for Jake and the twins to share one of the rooms, while Lily would have the smaller bedroom to herself. Meanwhile, I had an unexpected phone call from Jake's father, Derek. I talked to Amber, he said. She was surprisingly receptive to me being involved in Jake's life. We're going to start with supervised visits at your parents' place, see how it goes. It was the first positive development in weeks. Derek's reappearance and desire to be involved in his son's life seemed to trigger something in Amber. A recognition that she wasn't completely alone in this journey of parenthood. The weekend after Amber and the children moved to our parents' house, I returned to my apartment alone for the first time in years. The silence was deafening. I wandered from room to room, seeing evidence of the children everywhere, crayon marks on the walls, stickers on the furniture, tiny socks under the couch. For a moment, doubt and loneliness overwhelmed me. Had I made a terrible mistake? Would the children think I had abandoned them? Would this distance cause irreparable damage to our relationship? I called Dr. Mitchell, who had given me her emergency number for situations like this. What you're feeling is normal, she assured me. You've been in caregiver mode for so long that the absence of those responsibilities creates a void. But that void is also an opportunity, a space for you to rediscover who you are apart from your role as your sister's keeper. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called an old friend. Rebecca and I had been close in college but had drifted apart as my responsibilities for Amber's children had consumed more and more of my time. Sam? Is that really you? She laughed when she answered. I was just thinking about you the other day. We made plans to meet for brunch that weekend, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to check with anyone else or arrange for childcare before making a social commitment. As I hung up the phone, I felt a strange mixture of freedom and grief, freedom to rediscover my own life, and grief for the years and opportunities that had been lost. But beneath both emotions was something else, something that felt suspiciously like hope. My first therapy session after Amber and the children moved out was intense. Dr. Mitchell guided me through an exercise to identify the underlying beliefs that had kept me trapped in the codependent relationship with my sister for so long. I believe that if I don't help Amber, no one will, I admitted. I believe that putting others' needs before my own makes me a good person. I believe that wanting my own life is selfish. As I spoke these beliefs aloud, their irrationality became clearer to me. Dr. Mitchell helped me challenge and reframe them. Amber has many potential sources of support, including our parents, social services, and even the fathers of her children if she's willing to involve them. Being a good person means maintaining healthy boundaries that allow both yourself and others to grow. Having your own life isn't selfish, it's necessary for your well-being and for modeling healthy independence to your nieces and nephews. Over the following weeks, I created a detailed list of boundaries for my relationship with Amber and the children. I shared this list with both my parents and Amber during a calm, planned conversation at my parents' house. I want to be clear about what I can and cannot do going forward, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady despite my nervousness. I love you all, and I want to be part of your lives in a healthy, sustainable way. My boundaries included specific times I was available for visits and childcare, 2 evenings per week and alternate Saturdays, a clear statement that I would no longer provide financial support beyond birthday and Christmas gifts, and an explanation that I would not be available for last-minute emergencies except in true crisis situations. My father nodded thoughtfully as I spoke. These sound like reasonable boundaries, Sam. We'll help Amber respect them. My mother seemed less certain but didn't object. Amber, surprisingly, listened without interrupting, though I could see the tension in her face. I understand why you need these rules, she said when I finished. I don't like all of them, but I get it. And, I'm trying to do better, Sam. I really am. She showed me a folder of her own applications for job training programs, information about affordable childcare options, and a budget she was attempting to create with our father's help. It was a small step, but a significant one. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, Amber was taking concrete actions toward independence rather than simply making vague promises about changing. Meanwhile, I was taking steps to reclaim my own life. I repainted my apartment in colors I loved but had never considered practical with young children around. I joined a hiking group that met on Sunday mornings. I scheduled a long overdue performance review with my boss, Patricia, where I outlined my renewed commitment to my career and my availability for projects that might put me back on the promotion track. Most significantly, I began reconnecting with friends I'd lost touch with during the years I'd been consumed with caregiving. Some relationships had faded too much to fully recover, but others, like my friendship with Rebecca, seemed to pick up almost where we'd left off. Through Rebecca, I met Daniel, a landscape architect with kind eyes and a patient manner. On our third date, I found myself sharing the complicated story of my relationship with Amber and her children. That must have been incredibly difficult, he said when I finished. Setting boundaries with family is one of the hardest things to do. You sound like you speak from experience, I observed. Daniel nodded. My brother struggled with addiction for years. I almost bankrupted myself trying to bail him out of every crisis before I finally realized I was enabling him, not helping him. What happened? I asked. I stopped being his safety net and started supporting his recovery instead. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but today he's 3 years sober and thanked me recently for finally setting those boundaries. Daniel's understanding of my situation and respect for the boundaries I was establishing was refreshing. We began seeing each other regularly, taking things slowly and thoughtfully. About a month after Amber moved to our parents' house, I received an unexpected visit from Lily, my oldest niece. My mother had dropped her off, explaining that Lily had specifically asked to spend some time with me alone. As we baked cookies together, an activity we'd always enjoyed, Lily seemed unusually quiet. Is everything okay at Grandma and Grandpa's house? I asked gently. Lily nodded, carefully cutting out a star-shaped cookie. It's okay. Grandma helps me with my homework, and Grandpa built us cool bunk beds. She paused, then added, but I miss you. I miss you too, sweetie, I said, my throat tightening. That's why I'm so happy when you come visit. Mom said you don't want to live with us anymore because we're too much trouble, Lily continued, her young face serious as she placed the cookie on the baking sheet. I set down my cookie cutter and knelt to meet her eyes. That's not true at all, Lily. I love you and your brothers and sister very much. The reason we're not all living together isn't because of anything you kids did. It's because grown-ups sometimes need different things to be healthy and happy. Like how Mom needs to rest a lot now because of the baby. Similar to that, yes. I needed some space and time to take care of myself. But that doesn't change how much I love you. Lily considered this, then asked, will you still come to my school play next month? I'm going to be the narrator. I wouldn't miss it for anything, I promised. That evening, after my mother picked Lily up, I received a text from Amber. Lily came home talking about the cookies you made and how you're coming to her play. Thanks for being there for her. It was a simple message, but it felt like a small bridge being rebuilt between us. The following week brought another unexpected development. Amber called me directly, something she'd mostly avoided since our confrontation. Derek came to visit Jake yesterday, she said without preamble. It was, actually pretty good. Jake was shy at first but then showed him his dinosaur collection, and Derek knew all their names. Apparently, he's been reading up on dinosaurs just to have something to talk about with Jake. That's wonderful, I said, genuinely pleased. how do you feel about it? There was a pause before Amber replied. Honestly? It's weird seeing him again, especially now that he's so different, all responsible and put together. But it's good for Jake to have his dad in his life. And she hesitated, it's kind of a relief not to be doing everything completely alone. This admission, that sharing parental responsibilities could be a relief rather than a threat, seemed like significant progress for my sister. The most dramatic shift came a few days later when my mother called, her voice tight with worry. Your sister's in tears. Can you come over? I arrived at my parents' house expecting another crisis, but what I found was Amber sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by paperwork, tears streaming down her face. What happened? I asked, looking from Amber to my concerned parents. I applied for that medical office receptionist training program, Amber explained between sniffles. The one that would give me a certification in 6 months. They just called to tell me I got in, but the classes are 4 days a week, and I don't know how to manage childcare with mom and dad's doctor appointments and everything else. I sat down across from her, realizing that these weren't tears of manipulation or self-pity. These were tears of genuine overwhelm from someone trying to make positive changes but facing real logistical challenges. Let's figure it out together, I said, pulling out a notebook. What are the class hours? When are mom and dad's appointments? Maybe we can create a schedule that works for everyone. For the next hour, the 4 of us, Amber, my parents, and I, worked together to create a realistic plan. My father would take the older children to and from school on his days without medical appointments. My mother would watch the twins on her good days. I would cover one consistent afternoon per week. And we would look into whether Derek might be willing to have Jake for regular visits. For the first time, it felt like we were truly working as a family to support Amber's growth rather than simply compensating for her lack of responsibility. As I was leaving, Amber walked me to my car. This is really hard, she admitted. Sometimes I still wish I could just dump everything on you like before. It was easier. Easier for you, I pointed out. Not for me. I know, she said quietly. I don't think I really understood that before. I just took it for granted that you'd always be there to fix everything. She looked back at the house, where the children could be seen playing in the living room. I'm scared I'll fail at this, the training program, being more independent, all of it. You might stumble sometimes, I acknowledged. That's part of learning and growing. But you're not doing it alone, Amber. We're all here to support you, just in healthier ways than before. That evening, Daniel and I went for a walk in a nearby park. As we strolled along the tree-lined path in the golden evening light, I told him about the day's developments with my sister. It sounds like a real breakthrough, he observed. For both of you. I think it might be, I agreed. For the first time, I feel like I'm supporting Amber's growth instead of preventing it by solving all her problems for her. Daniel took my hand as we walked. And how about your growth? How does it feel to be reclaiming your own life? I considered the question carefully. Scary. Exciting. Liberating. Guilt-inducing. Sometimes all at the same time. That sounds about right, he laughed. Change is rarely comfortable, even when it's positive. As the weeks passed, our new family dynamic continued to evolve. There were setbacks, of course. Amber missed a class when the twins both came down with ear infections. My father threw out his back and couldn't drive the children for a week. I had to cancel a date with Daniel to cover childcare during a family emergency. But the difference was that these challenges were now shared among many people rather than falling solely on my shoulders. And Amber was increasingly taking responsibility for finding solutions rather than expecting others to fix everything for her. 3 months after our initial confrontation, Amber called me with news: the baby's a girl. The ultrasound confirmed it today. That's wonderful, I replied. Have you thought of any names? I was thinking Sophia, Amber said. It means wisdom. Seems appropriate, considering everything that's happened lately. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Perhaps this fifth child, conceived at a time of crisis, would be born into a healthier family system than her siblings had experienced. Sophia is beautiful, I told my sister. A new beginning. Speaking of new beginnings, Amber continued, Jason called yesterday. He wants to be involved with the baby. Jason was Sophia's father, the cell phone store manager who had disappeared from the picture shortly after Amber announced her pregnancy. How do you feel about that? I asked cautiously. Cautiously optimistic, Amber replied, echoing my thoughts. He seems genuinely interested, and he's got a stable job. We're going to take things slowly, he'll come to the next ultrasound appointment, and we'll see how it goes from there. Another step forward in Amber's journey toward a healthier approach to relationships and parenting. That weekend, I kept my regular visit with the children, taking them to a nearby playground. As I watched Lily push Jake on the swing while the twins dug enthusiastically in the sandbox, Daniel joined me on the bench. They're great kids, he observed, handing me a coffee he'd picked up on his way to meet us. They really are, I agreed. I love them so much. You know what I admire about you? Daniel said. You found a way to keep loving them while still taking care of yourself. That's not easy. His words crystallized something I'd been feeling but hadn't fully articulated. My love for my nieces and nephews hadn't diminished, if anything, it had become purer without the resentment that had been building under the weight of my former responsibilities. As Lily ran over to show me a dandelion she'd found, her face alight with simple joy, I felt a deep sense of peace. We were all finding our way to a new normal, one that offered the possibility of health and growth for everyone involved. 3 months later, I sat in the hospital waiting room, a small wrapped gift on my lap. My parents dozed in chairs nearby, exhausted after the long night. Daniel had gone for coffee, insisting that all of us needed the caffeine to stay awake. The door to the maternity ward opened, and a nurse appeared. She's asking for you, she said with a smile. I followed her down the hallway to Amber's room, where my sister sat propped up in bed, looking tired but radiant, a tiny bundle cradled in her arms. Meet your niece, Amber said softly as I approached. Sophia Grace. The baby was perfect, a tuft of dark hair, pink cheeks, impossibly small fingers curled against her blanket. I sat carefully on the edge of the bed, emotion tightening my throat as Amber placed Sophia in my arms. She's beautiful, I whispered, gently touching the baby's velvet cheek. I did it without an epidural, Amber said proudly. The nurse said I was really strong. You are strong, I agreed. Not just during labor, but these past months. You've come so far, Amber. My sister's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't have done it without you, Sam. Not just the practical help, but the boundaries too. As much as I hated them at first, they forced me to grow up. It was the most direct acknowledgement she'd ever made of how our relationship had changed, and needed to change. I brought something for Sophia, I said, handing her the small package. Inside was a silver bracelet, delicate but sturdy, with Sophia's name and birthdate engraved on a tiny heart charm. It's perfect, Amber said, touching the bracelet gently. Thank you. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both watching the sleeping newborn. Then Amber spoke again, her voice thoughtful. I've been thinking a lot about patterns lately, how we repeat them without even realizing it. I don't want my kids to grow up thinking the way we did, with one person always rescuing and the other always being rescued. What do you want them to learn instead? I asked. That it's okay to ask for help when you need it, but that ultimately, you're responsible for your own life, Amber replied. And that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself for them, it means supporting them and becoming their best self. The wisdom in her words surprised and moved me. Perhaps the greatest evidence of growth wasn't in the practical changes, Amber's job training program, which she was excelling in, or her improved financial management, but in this shift in her understanding of what healthy relationships looked like. The months following Sophia's birth brought continued evolution in our family dynamics. Amber moved with her 5 children into a subsidized 3-bedroom apartment, modest but clean and safe, located near both our parents' house and her training program. The older children transferred to schools in the new district, where they quickly made friends and adjusted to their new routines. Derek, Jake's father, had progressed from supervised visits to regular weekends with his son. The relationship was flourishing, with Jake eagerly anticipating their time together and Derek proving himself to be a reliable presence in his son's life. Even more surprisingly, Jason, Sophia's father, had remained involved throughout Amber's pregnancy and was now a consistent presence in his daughter's life, though he and Amber were not romantically involved. He had his own apartment but spent several evenings a week at Amber's place, helping with bath time and bedtime routines for all the children. My relationship with the children had found a new, healthier balance. I was now Aunt Sam, who took them for special outings on weekends, who attended their school performances and sports games, who hosted occasional sleepovers at my apartment where we built blanket forts and made homemade pizza. The joy I felt in their company was no longer tainted by resentment or exhaustion. My own life had blossomed in unexpected ways. The promotion I'd been passed over for twice finally came through, along with a significant salary increase that allowed me to begin rebuilding my depleted savings. I joined a book club and a hiking group, rediscovering interests I'd set aside years ago. And my relationship with Daniel continued to deepen, built on a foundation of mutual respect and healthy boundaries. One afternoon, I invited Amber for lunch at the cafe where we'd had our confrontation months earlier, a deliberate choice of location to mark how far we'd come. "Remember the last time we were here?" I asked as we settled at a corner table. Amber grimaced. "Not my finest moment. I said some pretty awful things to you." We were both at breaking points, I acknowledged. "But look at us now." My sister smiled, the confidence in her expression still new but growing stronger. "I'm actually proud of myself, Sam. Do you know I haven't asked Mom and Dad for money in over a month? And I've been putting a little aside from each paycheck, not much, but it's a start." "That's amazing, Amber. You should be proud." She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "You know what I realized recently? All those years when I was depending on you to fix everything, I wasn't just hurting you, I was selling myself short too. I never gave myself the chance to discover what I was capable of." "And what have you discovered?" I asked. "That I'm stronger than I thought. That I can handle hard things. That being a single mom is really challenging, but also that I don't have to do it completely alone to be independent." She looked up from her coffee, meeting my eyes directly. "I'm sorry, Sam. For taking advantage of your love and generosity for so long. For not seeing how much it was costing you." The apology, so long awaited and now freely given, washed over me like a wave of healing. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot to me." "I was thinking," Amber continued, "that maybe we could start a new tradition. Once a month, the kids stay with Mom and Dad or their dads for a night, and you and I do something together, just sisters. No kids, no crises, just reconnecting." The suggestion touched me deeply. For years, our relationship had been defined almost exclusively by Amber's needs and my caregiving. The idea of relating to each other simply as sisters, as friends, was both novel and appealing. "I'd like that," I agreed. "Very much." The following weekend, I hosted all 5 children for a special overnight visit at my apartment. Danielle helped me prepare, setting up air mattresses in the living room and stocking the refrigerator with kid-friendly foods. As the children arrived, their excitement palpable, I felt a rush of love for these small humans who had been such a significant part of my life. Lily, now 9, helped me prepare dinner while Jake and the twins built an elaborate fortress out of couch cushions and blankets. Baby Sophia, just 2 months old, dozed contentedly in the portable crib Amber had dropped off. After dinner, as we all gathered in the living room for a movie, Lily snuggled against me on the couch. "Aunt Sam," she whispered, "I'm glad you're our aunt and not our mom." Startled, I looked down at her serious little face. "What do you mean, sweetheart? Before, when we all lived here, you seemed sad a lot of the time. And Mom wasn't really being a mom. But now Mom is better at being a mom, and you're better at being an aunt. It's like everyone is doing the right job now." The wisdom in her observation took my breath away. "You're pretty smart, you know that?" She grinned. "Mom says I get that from you." Later, after the children were asleep, Lily and Jake on air mattresses, the twins in sleeping bags, and Sophia in her crib, Daniel and I sat on my small balcony, talking quietly under the stars. "You've come a long way," he observed. "All of you." "It wasn't easy," I admitted. "There were many times I almost gave in, almost went back to the old patterns because it seemed easier than pushing through the conflict and guilt." "But you didn't," he pointed out. "You held your boundaries with compassion. That's the hardest kind of love, the kind that risks temporary pain for long-term growth." His words resonated deeply. The journey of the past months had taught me that true love sometimes means saying no, that enabling isn't helping, and that healthy boundaries benefit everyone involved. The following Wednesday, I declined when Amber called asking if I could watch the children on short notice. It wasn't an emergency, she'd been invited to a movie with friends, and it fell outside our agreed-upon schedule. "I'm sorry, but I have plans tonight," I told her. "But I'd be happy to take them for our regular Saturday visit." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, and I braced myself for the guilt trip that might follow. Instead, Amber surprised me. "That's fair," she said. "I should have given you more notice. I'll see if Jason can watch them, or maybe I'll just reschedule with my friends." It was a small moment, but significant, Amber respecting my boundary without drama, finding alternative solutions rather than expecting me to rearrange my life for her convenience. The next day, I received a text message with a photo attached. It showed all 5 children at the park, with Amber and Jason smiling behind them. "Family picnic," the caption read. "Jason watched the kids last night so I could go out, and today we're all hanging out together." I showed the photo to Dr. Mitchell during our now monthly therapy session. "She's creating her own support network," I observed. "Not just relying on me anymore." "And how does that feel?" Dr. Mitchell asked. I considered the question carefully. "Liberating. For both of us." That weekend, as promised, I took the older children to the Science Museum while Amber had some one-on-one time with baby Sophia. As we explored the exhibits, I felt present in a way I hadn't been able to when overwhelmed by constant caregiving responsibilities. I could truly enjoy their excitement, their questions, their discoveries, without the undercurrent of resentment that had previously colored our interactions. When I dropped them off at Amber's apartment afterward, she invited me in for coffee. The apartment was modest but homey, with children's artwork taped to the refrigerator and family photos on the walls. It was chaotic, toys scattered across the floor, laundry folded but not yet put away, but it was clearly a home filled with love. "We're making it work," Amber said as she handed me a mug of coffee. "It's not perfect, but it's ours." As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year, from the moment of Amber's 5th pregnancy announcement to the present day. The sister who had depended on me to solve all her problems was now creating her own solutions. The children who had lived in my apartment were now thriving in their own home with a mother who was growing into her responsibilities. And I had reclaimed my life without sacrificing my relationship with the nieces and nephews I adored. The following month, I helped Amber organize a small birthday party for Lily. As we hung streamers and blew up balloons, we reminisced about the past and speculated about the future. "Remember when you told me I had to move out?" Amber asked, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. I was so angry I couldn't see straight. "I remember," I said, wincing at the memory of those painful weeks. "I wasn't sure our relationship would survive it." "But it did," Amber observed. "It's different now, but maybe better in some ways." "Healthier," I agreed. "It's like we had to break the old patterns to build something better." As we finished decorating, I watched Amber efficiently organizing the snacks and party favors. There was a new confidence in her movements, a sense of ownership over her life that had been missing before. "You know," she said, arranging cupcakes on a platter, "I used to think independence meant doing everything alone. But now I realize it's more about taking responsibility for your own choices and accepting help on your terms, not just because you can't function without it. I nodded, struck by the growth in her perspective. That's exactly it. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is ask for help when you need it. When the party guests arrived, Lily's school friends and a few cousins, Amber took charge naturally, directing games and serving food while I assisted rather than led. It was a subtle but important shift in our dynamic. Later that evening, as the last guest departed, Lily hugged me tightly. "This was the best birthday ever, Aunt Sam." "I'm glad you enjoyed it, sweetheart," I said, smoothing her hair. "Mom did most of it," Lily said, her face serious. "She stayed up late making the goodie bags and everything." The pride in her voice when speaking about her mother was new and heartwarming. The children were noticing the changes in Amber too. As the months passed, our new family dynamic continued to strengthen and evolve. Amber completed her medical office receptionist certification and secured a full-time position at a pediatric clinic that offered benefits and consistent hours. The job suited her naturally sociable personality, and she took pride in her growing skills and independence. I flourished in my reclaimed life as well. The promotion at work led to exciting new projects that challenged and fulfilled me professionally. My relationship with Daniel deepened, and we began discussing a future together. I rediscovered hobbies and friendships that had been set aside during my years of intensive caregiving. Most importantly, I found a healthier relationship with my nieces and nephews, one based on quality time rather than obligation, on joy rather than resentment. When I declined midweek babysitting to attend a work function or date night, I did so without guilt, knowing that I would see them for our regular weekend outing where they would have my full, undivided attention. On a warm Sunday afternoon nearly a year after our initial confrontation, my entire family gathered at a local park for a picnic. My parents spread blankets under a sprawling oak tree while the children played on the nearby playground. Amber chatted with Jason, who had become a consistent and positive presence in all the children's lives, not just baby Sophia's. Derek pushed Jake on the swings, their matching smiles visible even from a distance. Daniel joined me at the picnic table where I was unpacking the food. "You look happy," he observed, his hand finding mine. "I am," I replied, surveying the scene before us. "It's not perfect, nothing ever is. But it's so much better than I could have imagined a year ago." My mother approached, carrying little Sophia on her hip. "This one's ready for her aunt," she said, transferring the babbling infant to my arms. As I cuddled my youngest niece, I reflected on the journey that had brought us all to this moment. The path hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been painful confrontations, tearful conversations, and difficult adjustments for everyone involved. But the end result, a healthier family system where everyone could grow and thrive, was worth every challenging step. "You know what I've learned through all this?" I said to Daniel as we watched Amber efficiently organizing the children for lunch, her confidence evident in every movement. "What's that?" he asked. "That sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop rescuing them. That boundaries aren't walls to keep people out, they're guidelines that allow relationships to flourish in healthy ways. And that it's possible to love someone deeply while still taking care of yourself." "Important lessons," Daniel agreed. "Not just for you and Amber, but for all of us." As we gathered around the picnic table, my parents, Amber and her children, Derek, Jason, Daniel, and me, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey had been difficult, but the destination was worth every painful step. "Before we eat," my father said, raising his glass of lemonade, "I'd like to propose a toast. To family, not just the one we're born into, but the one we choose to create together. And to growth even when it's uncomfortable." "To growth," we echoed, glasses clinking in the sunshine. Later, as I helped Lily build a sandcastle in the playground, she looked up at me thoughtfully. "Aunt Sam, remember when you told us you couldn't live with us anymore, and I was really sad?" "I remember," I said, my heart constricting at the memory of those difficult days. "I understand now," she said, patting the sand into place with surprising wisdom for a child not yet 10. "Sometimes you have to change things that aren't working so they can get better." I hugged her close, marveling at the resilience and insight of this remarkable child. That's exactly right, Lily. And look how much better things are now. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the extraordinary transformation our family had undergone. My sister was growing into the mother her children deserved. My parents were enjoying their grandchildren without being overwhelmed by responsibilities that weren't theirs to carry. The children were thriving in a more stable, consistent environment. And I had reclaimed my life while maintaining loving relationships with everyone involved. It hadn't been easy, and there would undoubtedly be challenges ahead. But we had broken the unhealthy patterns that had trapped us for so long, and in their place, we were building something stronger, healthier, and more beautiful than I could have imagined. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? Share your experience in the comments below. What helped you stay firm in your decision when guilt or pressure threatened to make you give in? If you found this story helpful, please like and subscribe for more content about family dynamics and healthy relationships. Remember, sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately heal us all. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength and clarity on your own journey toward healthier relationships.